Let's take a closer look today at the Ukrainian conflict with Russia and why America has anything to do with it. Stay tuned
for the best meat you have ever eaten. Check out samsbutchershop.com. Go and shop around. When you go to checkout, enter the promo code T for a 5% discount. Check it out.
Hello everyone, Trailer Trash Tim. How's your mom and them? Glad you're here. Welcome to you. A happy Thursday. I hope you are all well. Real quick, if you would please like this video down below, hit the thumbs up button. If you have not yet subscribed to the channel, please do so. All the relevant links are down below. I want to get going because I have tons of information to try and muddle through in a few minutes. Let's see if I can do it. I want to take a closer look at what is happening in Ukraine and why we are here, how we got here. And I'm speaking from the perspective of an American, of course. Those of you that are watching me, you're literally all over the world, and I appreciate that. But I have the particular outlook from this conflict, this war, as an American, particularly since the U.S. government has decided to poke its nose into the business of another sovereign country yet again. And I think any American should be asking the valid question, why are we there? And why are we pumping so much money that we do not have into this conflict? Let's go back in time. Let's go back in time about 9 or 10 years. Ukraine had a president by the name of Viktor Yanukovych. Viktor Yanukovych was the duly elected president of Ukraine. There was a coup in the year 2014. There's no question that the CIA was in Ukraine at that time, and the evidence is overwhelming that the CIA had a hand in this coup, in overthrowing the legitimate administration of President Yanukovych. He was a democratically elected president, but he was deposed and he had to eventually flee the country. Well, he was a little bit more about this man, Viktor Yanukovych. President Yanukovych wanted to sign a trade deal with the European Union and with the West, but the deal that had been proposed, that he had agreed to sign at the time before the coup, the deal that was placed before him at the last minute prohibited any deal which included Russia. In other words, he could trade with the West and he could trade with the European Union, but the deal that was before him, backed by the West and by the EU, prohibited any trade with Russia. And at the last minute, this was shoved onto the desk, and he said, no, I'm not going to sign this. He refused to sign it, and the coup was on. Now, one reason we know that the coup had the backing of the CIA is because the president, the puppet who was installed as president, of course, he's there now, Zelensky, we were responsible in large part for this regime change. And the reason I can say that is because there's a woman by the name of Victoria Nuland. She is the Undersecretary of State in the Biden administration. And we have phone calls from Victoria Nuland where she is talking about selecting the new president of Ukraine. Those phone calls were leaked and they're out there. So the new government, the invalid, illegitimate government of Zelensky, was installed after Yanukovych had to flee the country. Now, what about Zelensky? There's a lot I could say about him. We're going to do several videos on him, but like I say, I got a lot of information to work through. But I'm going to tell you, I think, pretty much enough for you to get a decent understanding of who this puppet Zelensky actually is. Zelensky took office in light of the coup in the year 2014. Zelensky was supported and is supported by I'm going to have to use my flashcard, folks, because I don't know what I can say on YouTube, so bear with me. Zelensky was supported in large part by a lot of shady characters, but some of the characters were neo. Okay, you got that? And I'm talking specifically about the Azov Battalion. The Azov Battalion group, and they've been around for quite a while. It was the Azov Battalion, listen carefully to this, the Azov Battalion welcomed, I can't say his name. Hey, will you bear with me while I write something down real quick? Just talk amongst yourselves while I write something down. I should have done this before I started, and I failed to do it. I could sing for you or something, but that won't be necessary. I wrote it out. Hey, it's just me, right? The Azov Battalion has been in Ukraine for a long time, and they welcomed the invasion of this man into Ukraine in World War II. They are literally this in Ukraine. The Azov Battalion is literally this, and these are the people who support Zelensky as president of Ukraine. Now, once Zelensky took power in Ukraine, the Azov Battalion, who I remind you are these, they backed the ethnic cleansing of Russians from Ukraine. Not only that, but they backed the banning of the Russian language in Ukraine. The fact of the matter is there's a whole lot of Russians in Ukraine. There were a lot of Russians in the Donbass region of Ukraine, and many of these Russians were being slaughtered by the Azov Battalion, right? Imagine if you're an American and there's a group like this in Mexico, and this group is slaughtering Americans. What would you expect the American president to do? Well, the Russian president responded to this, as he should. The Russian President Putin had every legitimate cause to go into Ukraine and free his people that were being slaughtered by this group. In case you doubt what I'm saying about the Azov Battalion, in case you doubt the fact that they welcomed this man into Ukraine after the invasion with open arms, in case you doubt the fact that they are this, and this is not just a throwaway word, they literally are this. This is the Azov Battalion. In case you doubt what I'm saying about them, this is the patch they wear on their uniform, okay? This is the Azov Battalion patch. This is the emblem of the Azov Battalion, which includes the Wolf's Angel and Black Sun symbols. Do you know who is receiving money, taxpayer money, from the United States of America? It's these people, okay? That's who's getting our money. How do you feel about the thing now? The Azov Battalion is the most influential military group in Ukraine. They are in bed with Zelensky, who is in bed with Joe Biden, who is sending him every nickel and dime he can find. And the fact of the matter is Biden's corruption extends into Ukraine, and he's covering that up. This thing has tentacles all over the place. The spider web is large. UPS man pulling up. That's all right. Now let's talk about some of the U.S. provocations in the nation of Ukraine. Number one, we deposed a democratically elected government in Ukraine. We expanded NATO in Ukraine. And we funneled weapons into a civil war on Russia's border. That's what we've been doing. In addition to that, how you doing, man? Good. Thanks a lot. Talking to my UPS man. In addition to that, the United States tore up treaties we had made with Russia. So you get this. We deposed a democratically elected government in Ukraine. We expanded NATO. We didn't include Ukraine into NATO, but we certainly wanted to. And we funneled weapons into a civil war on Russia's border with Ukraine, as well as tearing up the treaties. I'm sorry I got sidetracked. My UPS man pulled up. Hey, this is real life, right? We're really filming here. Now, let's talk about the time right after the Second World War. I've had to do so much research just for this video. You better appreciate this. I hope you do. Now, after the Second World War, after the war was over, Russia agreed not to contest the admission of Germany into NATO. Now the war is over, and we have agreed to, we have created NATO, and we have invited Germany to be, the defeated Germany, to be a part of NATO. And we're having to deal with Russia after the war, all right? And this is the communist Russia. They agreed not to contest, Russia did, not to contest the admission of Germany into NATO. In exchange for this agreement, American officials at that time committed in writing, listen carefully please, that NATO would not extend 1 inch, this was on paper, 1 inch east of the German border. Did that hold up? Who broke that agreement? This agreement was broken in the 1990s under good old Slick Willie, Bill Clinton, and every president since him, and we began this eastward expansion, this encroachment of NATO, and NATO is the United States, toward Russia. This was done against explicit warnings from foreign policy experts in the 1990s who said that Russia would fear and react to these violations as nakedly hostile attempts to surround them militarily, and of course they would. Just imagine if you are an American, for example, and Russia is encroaching all in the Western Hemisphere. They put bases in Canada. They put bases in Mexico. They put bases in Cuba. How would we feel as Americans about this? Folks, let's be rational about this thing. Let's be reasonable. How is Russia supposed to feel when the encroachment of NATO comes closer and closer and closer to their borders? And we break our treaties with them. We break our word with them. We tell them we're going to let Germany into NATO, but it's never going to go any further. And we break our words. How is Russia supposed to react to this? Oh my gosh. Americans are told by the mainstream media that Ukraine is a burgeoning democracy. Well, let me tell you what this burgeoning democracy has done very recently. Number one, Zelensky has canceled the next round of elections. Zelensky has banned churches. You got that? Zelensky, the puppet, the one that the American politicians all love, he has arrested clergy and thrown them into prison. Zelensky has banned political opposition. Zelensky has banned the opposing political parties, 11 of them to be exact. Zelensky has banned in Ukraine opposition media. Does this sound like a burgeoning democracy to you, or does it sound like that? Or does it sound like that? Because that is what the United States government is supporting with your tax dollars if you're an American. You got that? Is that clear enough? I hope it's clear enough. This is what American taxpayers are being forced to support. You're not told that in the mainstream media, are you? That's a fact. Do you know who doesn't report this? Do you know who does not report this? I'll tell you. I'll give you a list. I looked it up. You know who tells you the exact opposite? The Washington Post tells you the exact opposite. The Washington Post will tell you that Ukraine is a burgeoning democracy and Zelensky is a terrific person. He's a great guy, and Putin is evil and Russia is evil, and Zelensky he's the man of the hour. The NBC News will tell you the same thing. NPR will tell you the same thing. PBS tells you that. The New York Times tells you that. The CBS News tells you that. USA Today tells you that. CNN tells you that. The Wall Street Journal tells you that. The Guardian in the UK tells you that. BBC tells you this. MSNBC, the Boston Globe, Yahoo News, the Associated Press, Time Magazine, and on and on and on it goes. In other words, the mainstream media, I looked every one of these up. They all tell you that what's happening in Ukraine from the Zelensky's perspective is tragic, and we all need to support Zelensky, and we all need to stand behind him, and we all need to send him more money. All the mainstream media in the West tells you that, which is evidence enough to tell you that they're wrong. Now, let me move on real quick to something else, if I can. Right now, we're having a bit of a budget crisis in America, like any other day. But we're facing the threat of yet another government shutdown. I probably want to do a show just on that. But U.S. Senator Rand Paul stood in the well of the Senate today to address this. What's happening is we've got to pass some sort of spending resolution to keep the government open, okay, to avoid a government shutdown. This is on Thursday, September 21st. Yesterday, on Wednesday, Rand Paul stood in the well of the Senate. We've got to keep funding the government to keep it open, or else we have a government shutdown and the world will come to an end, right? Well, attached to the spending bill that has been proposed is more aid for Ukraine to the tune of $25 billion. In other words, $25 billion for these kind of people, okay? $25 billion for these sorts of people from the U.S. taxpayer. And Rand Paul stood up in the floor of the Senate, and this is what he said. He said, I will not support any spending bill to keep the government open, which includes aid, more aid for Ukraine and the Zelensky government. That's what he said. Every time he continued that I propose having an inspector general sent over there to find out where the money is going, it gets shot down by the rest of the Senate. It's not an unreasonable request. We had one in Afghanistan, for heaven's sakes. But what's happening is they are proposing a bill to send 25 to keep the government open, to fund the U.S. government, but that bill includes $25 billion more to Ukraine. And Rand Paul says, I will not support it, nor should he, because he says if we're going to send them $25 billion, we're going to have to borrow this money from China. And guess what? Money you borrow is money you have to pay back. We have to borrow money from our enemy, China. Money we've got to pay back. What do we think causes inflation? And you can tack on another $25 billion that we would send to Ukraine to support the kind of people I'm talking about. And Rand Paul says, hell no, I'm not going to do this. We're not going to, if you want to pass a spending bill to keep the government open, the American government open, we'll talk about it, but I'm not voting to send one more penny to Ukraine. God bless this man. That's what's going on. I want to close with a tweet from John the Vegetable Fetterman, U.S. Senator from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which kind of goes in line with what I'm talking about here. This is what he tweeted just a while ago. I quote to you. This is a quote from John Fetterman. Quote, if those jagoffs in this House stop trying to shut down our government and fully support Ukraine, then I will save democracy by wearing a suit on the Senate floor next week. Unquote. This man is a piece of crap. He is a disgrace. He is an embarrassment. How on earth he serves in the United States Senate is beyond me. Are you one of those souls who still believes we need to be in Ukraine? Are you one of those Americans or Westerners or Europeans who believe that the cause of Ukraine against Russia is righteous and we need to support them with aid and military equipment and treasure and military boots on the ground? Do you still believe that we need to be involved in that conflict between Russia and Ukraine? Then you are in bed with people like John Fetterman, and you're in bed with these kind of people right here. And you ought to put this on the jacket you wear, because that's what you stand for. This is what is going on, folks. And it is time every American wakes up and smells the coffee. We need to get our asses out of Ukraine, get our money out of Ukraine right now, and let these two nations fight it out. We've got no business being there. If you think we need to be there, then you agree with Joe Biden. You agree with John Fetterman. You agree with those people. You agree with just about everybody in Congress. You surely agree with every Democrat in Congress. It is time for us to get out of Ukraine. I know I stumbled and bumbled a lot through that video, but it's raw and there it is. So do with it what you will. I'm telling you, I am up to here with this absolute cesspool of Ukraine and our involvement therein. It is time for us to get out and get the hell out now. We are provoking Russia. We are absolutely looking down the double barrels of World War III. We are looking down the barrel of nuclear weapons if we do not wise up and get the hell out of Ukraine. Do me a favor, please. Would you graciously be so kind as to share this video with friends and family and on your social media? I am doing my best to get the word out. I'm joining along with people like the Duran, people like Alex Christoporos. I butchered your name, Alex. I apologize. Rand Paul, and on and on and on. There are voices out here that are speaking to sane people that you can still reason with. Call your congressmen, call your senators, call your political leaders, whatever nation you're in, and tell them it is time for us to back off from the brink of World War III. Folks, this is serious business. We have got to wise up before it is too late. And it isn't too late yet, but we are at the 11 o'clock hour. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it very much. This is Trailer Trash Tim. I will see you tomorrow.